everybody, to episode 1-1 of Retro Encounter, RPG Fan's newest and, dare I say, almost most exciting podcast. Biases aside, I'm Stephen Meyerink, tailless on the boards. Joining me today is a veritable cavalcade of stars, including Josh Curry.
Hey, everyone.
Davi Tesnovich.
Hey.
Peter Triezenberg.
Hello.
Marcos Gaspar.
Howdy.
And the Legend of Heroes, Trails in the Sky. You've probably listened to episode 0 by this point, but just to do a quick recap in case you ignored that one, basically this is going to be our new podcast where we spend a few episodes each month talking about a different game that we're all playing through. And if our super clever Super Mario style numbering scheme has not given it away, we're going to be numbering them sort of like seasons, so all of this particular game will be 1-1, 1-2, 1-3, so you can follow along, if there's a particular game you want to ignore, or, you want to get into the middle of it. All of the second episodes are going to be sort of us in the midst of the game. These first episodes, like this one, are going to be us having just started the game. In this case, the group has completed the prologue, and so we're going to be having our sort of introduction to the game and what we're thinking and what we're playing it on. And then the final episode, which will usually air at the end of the month, will be after we finished it, what our final thoughts are. Was it a Mass Effect 3 style flaming catastrophe, or was it a great ending Kingdom Hearts 2 style? Bias again, but forgive me. Anyways, gentlemen, I'm going to leave it to, I believe, I'm just going to throw it to the four of you to discuss Trails in the Sky. Where does it come from? Where did it go?
Well, I also think first we should say, obviously, since we're playing through the game, there's going to be massive amounts of spoilers.
Yes, every episode of this, spoiler territory. I would assume that, at least for those of us that haven't played through it yet, and maybe I think when you start talking, introduce, how your familiarity with the game if you've played it before, and what platform you're playing it on. But I would assume we won't have a ton of spoilers in this one, just because none of us, or some of us, have not played it before. But I would definitely say, in general, assume if you're listening to this show, you're going to get spoiled. You should play along with us, but again, we might talk about who the final boss is.
It's
sure.
Sephiroth.
We haven't done a Final Fantasy VII episode yet. Spoilers!
And
What?
I hope
Sephiroth's
we
the
never
final
do.
boss?
That's oh.
Well, I mean, Sephiroth with no shirt on and a fabulous cloud. We're talking about Trails in the Sky. Joshua and Estelle.
So, speaking of Joshua, how are you coming at this game, Josh Curry?
Ooh.
It really caught me off guard that the person was named me. And then it's even worse that he's not a main character. Well, he is a main character, but he's not the main character.
Yeah, it's actually sort of surprising. I didn't realize that Estelle was sort of more of the main character. Joshua is sort of her bro.
Yeah.
Or boo.
Her boo. Yeah. Well, it's
Her bro boo.
not to dive too much into my early impressions, but early on in the game, it is very much a prototypical anime game where it's like, oh, the brother and sister, and he came to the family, a few years ago, and he's not their real brother, but he sort of is. And
Can we just point out that the introduction of him is like the creepiest thing ever?
Yeah, he asks, I wrote this down, he asks Cassius, why didn't you leave me to die?
No, before that.
He's
Cassius
11 years old.
Cassius shows up and he's like, hey, I got a present for you. It's a boy.
if someone did that to me, I'd be like, thanks, bye. Maybe I'm not averse to kids or anything, but that just seems like a crappy gift. I mean, like unless you want kids. I'm getting off on a tangent.
Okay.
Yeah, it's true. If you want kids, and I guess someone brings you one, I still feel like that would be an odd situation.
For sure. But yeah, so Estelle freaks out. That was a great moment.
Implied kidnapping is not the best way to obtain siblings. I'm sorry, Estelle.
It was really effective, though, in this case.
Yeah, and they grew really tight. They have their little speech early on in the game. No matter what, you're still my son. Even if you're not my real son, you're my son. And yeah, I'll buy that.
No, so the NPCs lampshade Estelle and Joshua a lot, even in the first area. Yeah,
I think there's a lot of that, and I think I've made no secret in other podcasts and that I started playing this game, and actually, as it turns out, I basically finished the prologue, and for me, I was sort of like, oh, this is such a tropey, sort of ugly game. And I know that it's an older game and that we can't make fun of Falcom games because they're perfect and amazing. But, for me, prior to restarting it recently for this show, my impression was, okay, I've watched a lot of anime. I've played a lot of Japanese games. I'm not seeing anything in this very early on that seems especially unique or interesting. It's like, oh, here's like one trope on top of another, a turn-based battle system.
Yeah, for sure. I was gonna say, the one thing it maybe has going is it's got like, the really stereotypical plucky youth protagonist, but it's a girl.
Yeah, and not to monopolize the whole discussion, but I played further than the prologue. I think I'm near the end of the first chapter, not the game first chapter, but the first chapter of the first game, and I'm actually warming up to it. I'm getting a very like good Tales vibe where it's not like, again, I'm going to hate on Tales of Excelia here, but it takes tropes, but then it sort of not necessarily subverts them, but does really interesting things to them. It tells them well. The writing is fantastic. Nobody doubts Dixie's ability to
for sure.
this game. But, they have such personality, and that even when it's a sequence I've seen a million times, like, oh, look, Estelle's being dumb and impulsive again, her writing and the way the other characters react to it, it's very anime, but it's also very endearing.
Yeah, the flavor text is, like, right on.
It's eventually endearing.
Yes, I would agree that not right away.
So we kind of, in the pre-show, were discussing how far we actually went. It seems like I went farther than most everybody.
I think we're at the same point, Josh. I just finished the prologue a couple of hours ago.
Okay. The first bit I found dreadfully boring and frustrating.
And long.
It was rough.
Well,
every single explanation for everything in the world, and then the same, like, every conversation when they talk about something, they'll be like, well, Estelle, you're an idiot, you won't get this.
Baka.
It's just like, they went so many times, like, I need this to end.
Well,
it definitely gets off to a slow start.
I think that's the best way to describe it. It's a slow start, and I don't think right away it justifies its own existence. It's like, oh my gosh, we get it. We know all of these tropes. Stop over-explaining them to us. They work for a monster hunting guild. They're plucky. She's dumb. The dad is a legendary hero, but we don't know why, and probably has a dark past.
She's sleepy and eats a lot, just like every protagonist ever.
They have materia.
Yeah.
No, it's not materia, Peter. It's ornaments.
Oh, I'm sorry. I mean, I thought you were talking about spheres.
No, I was talking about the license board. No, that doesn't work. No, I agree. I think, and I was talking to my roommate about this because he had sort of expressed some interest in the game, and we both in the past had the same experience of, hey, I played the beginning of this game. Wow, this is just, it's very slow burn. They dump text upon text upon text on you, and it's not like some games where they dump a lot of interesting text. They're dumping all this text that is over-explaining things that we knew the moment we saw these characters.
Yeah. It's really interesting because I had a complete, opposite reaction to the prologue. I find it incredibly fascinating. I think what I really like about it is the actual townspeople and the characters, because while time passes, or I guess certain events or triggers are like made or happen or whatever, like the the dialogue between the villagers and the main characters change and what's happening, and I think that was really cool.
Yeah,
that's a really cool subtle thing they do throughout the game. Is just the passage of time. Like when you turn in your quests and Estelle's like, "Man, I'm beat," and you see the sun setting, you're like, "Yeah, we did do a lot today."
Well, and I also noticed too, like there was when you finish the first quest or one of the first bracer quests, and again, this might be getting into chapter 1 a little bit, but as you do things, people react to the jobs you've done. Like, some kid is missed. There's the lady's son is missing. He's off doing something. She's like, I don't know where he is, and you're like, hey, I'm sort of looking into that right now. What's he off doing? I agree. I think early on, it's just like the town is really big, and they're sort of like, all right, go do stuff in town, and you're like, I don't know where anything is. I have a rough map.
Did everybody else get lost? I couldn't even find the guild originally. I think I spent like 20 minutes trying to find the guild.
I did until I figured out there was a map.
Yeah,
I still couldn't. Like, I used the map and I couldn't figure it out.
I mean, the color coding helps a lot when you get later in the game and you know what color everything is.
I get annoyed by rotating mini map. So once I went into the options and said no, stay fixed north, then I stopped
does
getting
anyone
lost.
use those?
Oh,
what is the
I never
point?
do.
So later on, which I'm not sure how far you guys got, but you go up a tower, and it's
Yeah.
circular in shape, so you have to spin it to be able to see where some of the passages are.
Ooh. So maybe I could break the discussion into, since this is an early podcast or an early game discussion. How do we feel about the way this game looks? I know I'm playing it on a Vita, the PSP version on a Vita, so it's already stretched to begin with. I still have use of my eyes, but they're not what they used to be. Because wow, is that some blurry dialogue?
I'm the same. I'm playing the PSP version on a slim Vita, and it doesn't look the worst, but it's definitely very, very stretched out.
I'm just gonna go out and say that it looks like shit.
Yeah,
I'd say it looks like
Tell us how you
shit.
really feel.
I would confidently say it looks bad, but like I played a lot of games that look worse than this.
So what I will say is that I like the artwork for the main characters.
I like the character portraits.
Yeah, no, definitely. And this could be me being a Falcom heathen, but I think all of Falcom's games look incredibly generic trope anime. Like, I think most of their artwork, most of their worlds, it's like, oh, this is European fantasy. Gotcha.
That's kind of what put me off from trying it at first.
Yeah, it's like, oh, look, wooden town. But I think, again, that all sort of plays into the fact that this is a game whose heart is in its dialogue and, the relationships of its characters as the game progresses. So I think it's, again, for me, it's good that I've started playing it more because I am sort of charmed by it. It's not the most attractive game, but it has, I would say, great music. And someone's going to point out to me that I always say I don't like Falcom music, but I actually really like this game's soundtrack.
Yeah,
I actually legitimately listened to the title screen for a while. I just left it up.
Yeah,
it's great stuff. And like the main theme that plays in that intro movie is rad.
Yeah,
I hijacked the discussion to music. Such a good managing it.
Okay, so I think I was supposed to talk about Legend of Heroes.
Yes, please do. Actually, that would be really helpful.
So, Legend of Heroes is an extensive series of JRPGs made by Nihon Falcom. Trails in the Sky is commonly referred to as Trails in the Sky First Chapter because it's the first in a trilogy, and that trilogy composes the sixth entry in the Legend of the Heroes games.
So it's sort of it's a trilogy, a la Final Fantasy 13 is a trilogy as the 13th installment of Final Fantasy.
Yes, and the way these games seem to go is kind of like Suikoden, where the stories aren't usually interconnected, but you're learning things about the world and the politics and the setting as you go through from game to game.
So now, this is a question I'm totally ignorant on this. You look at the world map, it is a giant world map that is clearly not showing you the entire world. Do the other games take place in this same world, just in different places?
Yes. Like I said, very similar to Suikoden in that way. You get a lot of little hints in the prologue, especially when they're giving you that vertical wall of information. They're like, and this is our relationship with this kingdom that you're not actually going to see in the game, but whatever. So.
Well, that's too bad. I was hoping they're using it as foreshadowing that we'd eventually go to those places.
Yeah,
you do go to a lot of them.
Okay.
Because I'm to understand this is not a short RPG. It's not like mega long, but I know it's at least like 35, 40 hours or something like that. So for a game called First Chapter, well, we don't want to discuss the ending yet.
Have you seen? I'm sorry. So okay. So this game originally came out in 2004. And then it came to the United States in 2011, and Xseed had the rights for a long time. They were just working on it because it's really big.
Yeah, there's a ton of dialogue.
Yeah, if you guys have seen the picture of the scenario books for first and second chapter is like 3 times the size of first chapter.
Oh boy.
Like the side quest section of book 2 is almost as big as first chapter.
So now, is third chapter out in Japan, or is it final chapter, or is it?
Yeah, it's out in Japan. Third chapter it's not continuing the Estelle Joshua storyline.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So whereas 2 occurs like sometime soon after first chapter, third is like different land, different people. Although there are recurring characters, like all your side people, your guest characters in this game show up.
Okay. So I guess the vibe I get is that second chapter is a Golden Sun: The Lost Age to first chapter in terms of I am told the ending of this game is not a satisfying ending because it's not an ending. It's just a to be continued.
Great.
Yeah, I would call it satisfying though, because you get a lot of good leads.
Oh, okay. Again, having not made it there yet, I know people are eagerly anticipating second chapter, and I wasn't sure if it was because they just love the first one or if because it's like I really would like to know what happens in all of these situations.
So yeah, I have beaten this game before back in 2012 on the PSP, and I cannot remember any of it.
Well, that must make it fun to play again.
Yes.
A memorable game.
Yeah, no, I remember liking it, and I remember some specific things, but like I totally forgot the combat system, and I was playing it again today, and I was like, oh, this is pretty fun.
What a great segue, because I was going to say, what do you guys think of the way it actually plays? I would say we could talk about combat first, because I think there's a little more going on in terms of combat than there is in terms of exploration.
What do we think about arts and crafts?
Arts and crafts, silly names, but for me, the positioning of it is actually really interesting. When I was a kid, I would always design hypothetical, amazing JRPGs that I would want to play, and at the time I just called them RPGs because I had no conception of it. But it was I want a battle system where you can move around because everyone always stands in a line. Well, we have it here, turn-based system where you move around. And I like that it's sort of that. Actually, I don't know that it reveals itself right away, but there's actually a good bit of strategy to the way you move, it seems, because, for example, I'll start a battle and the enemies are out of range, so I'll only move 2 or 3 squares forward, so that way I know the enemy can't reach me, so then they move forward into range, and then I'll team up and hit them, or, something like that.
Yeah, you kind of pull them.
Yeah, and I also think it's really interesting that there's sort of the mechanic of, here's your bar of, I can't remember the difference, I think it's SP and LP or something, or CP or whatever.
CP.
Yeah.
And CP, yeah.
Okay, and I think it's interesting that one of them is a meter that starts at full and drains, the other one is a meter that starts at empty and you have to fill. That creates a really interesting flow for combat that I think is really to the game's credit, because I never feel like I'm sitting on a turn I'm just going to hit you because that's all I can do. It's well, I can build up the gauge, or I can
And at the same time, you also never get in this rut where you feel like, well, I'm just going to do my big move every turn because it's the one that does the most damage.
Exactly. And, that also encourages you to strategically sort of build up to that big move, Because, at least early on, it seems like you take quite a bit of damage. Random dudes will come up and whack Estelle twice, and she's, at a quarter of her health. So, it seems like, I don't know how hard the game ends up being, but from what I've played so far, it's sort of a healthy level of challenge in that it's not impossibly hard. I haven't died or anything, but I'm at least thinking about how I'm fighting. It's not like I'm just hitting attack.
You have to respect it.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that every battle you could actually, for the most part, lose, which adds a little extra element to it. Because you could be wandering. It's I just finished this dungeon. I'm going to wander back. I'm going to turn this quest in, essentially, and all of a sudden
Then you get back attacked by a giant ladybug.
Yeah, because those ladybugs move so fast.
They should do. And they're weirdly colored, too. They bother me.
Yeah.
Could that just be the Vita screen?
It's possible. Is anybody playing on PC?
Me?
How do you feel about, to go slightly off topic, how do you feel about how it looks on PC? Is the text in the menus, are they a little clearer? I imagine the core assets aren't incredibly glorious, but at least in terms of the interface and stuff.
I didn't have a problem with the text. I'm playing it on a 32-inch HD TV, so the graphics are pretty stretchy. The game is kind of blurry, but the text is sharp.
Yeah, for me, I'm playing on it's some pretty terrible monitor. I don't even know the company, but it's a 18-inch, and you change the resolutions and it'll come out fine, but I do understand what you mean about the text. Even when I try to read certain things, it does come off a little blurry, especially at a certain point in the screen. at first I thought, oh, my display is terrible. But then I moved the actual window, and then it's the game.
So one really
Good.
One really odd thing is I complain about how I think the visuals look. I actually found the text charming. Like the blurry kind of not. I don't know. There's
like
that old.
Did it
era
remind you of a
PS1
easier
type
time?
right. Like so, obviously, like the aesthetics are like it's a PS1 looking game.
Absolutely.
And with the actual graphics, that irritated me. But with the actual text, that was where I was like, oh yeah, I remember this time. Like that brought like that warmth feeling.
Yeah, well, we sort of take. I think as the hardware marches on, and we get used to the way text looks, and like you look at the interface in Final Fantasy XIV, and it's very sharp and high resolution. But you go back and look at like Final Fantasy VIII, and it's like, oh my gosh, we can see pixels in the text in the original version of the game, just because we've gotten used to high resolution, like 1900 by 1000 text. That it does have that sort of charm where I'm like, yeah, I could have been playing this on PlayStation.
And every time Estelle screams and it like one word takes up the whole screen.
I love that.
Yeah, actually I really like that. Yeah.
And it's one of those things like you do not see that anymore. And that was one of those things like that really struck me as like this has that old time charm.
Absolutely. And also too, we sort of ragged on the graphics a little bit, and I'm not saying that they're amazing, but I do think there's a lot of care put into them. Like for example, like when you hit an enemy and the sepith comes out of them, I like that. That's a tiny detail. And at first I was like, why are colored things coming out of the enemies? And it's like, oh, it's because they're dropping magic gems.
Yeah, like I think for myself, I think my favorite just thing to watch, in both graphically and just humorously, is the special attacks during battle, like Estelle's pommel or one of Joshua's attacks. Yep, and then just like runs up and it's like this like motion video thing, whatever, with them doing their cutscene attack.
Yeah,
it's very Skies of Arcadia. The special moves, like they really remind me of like Pirate's Wrath. Or, I definitely get a very like. There's a lot of emphasis on these characters as personalities, as opposed to them just being sort of static, HP boxes.
Do you remember being excited whenever I would get a guest character to see their moves? Like,
yeah, well, it's again, to relate it again to Skies of Arcadia. It was cool when you got a new fourth party member, because it's like, this is a person who's going to be totally different. I wonder how they fight, because this is before the age of sort of customize your character to do whatever you want, especially as we've gotten to like later Final Fantasies, like for example at 12, unless you're playing the Zodiac job system version, it's just sort of, my character is whatever weapon I give them, and their quickenings are all sort of like cosmic light bursts, so that's irrelevant. They look cool, but they don't have personality to them. Like I don't look and go, oh man, it's Pyroclasm, totally Vaughn. Well, I do that one because that's in Dissidia, but with this, it's sort of like the attacks are part of the character, and I like that.
Sure.
It also has Tails-style cut-ins for the special moves, which, I mean, come on, it's awesome.
Yeah, those are always cool.
Again, that's a trope of like a lot of anime-style games, but it's not one I hope ever goes away. I'm totally cool.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think that's really a strong suit of Trails in the Sky, is that while it is very tropey, it's also has a really high amount of like attention to detail. Like it's just the little things. Like, have you guys been talking to the treasure chests?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
The fact that if you examine an open treasure chest, and then it'll have a little dialogue window like, this chest is empty. I wonder whose fault that is.
Yeah, I could be mistaken, but I think we can actually thank Tom from Xseed for that, Tom Lipschultz. I actually recall him posting on Facebook or something at one point, or on their Twitter, a screenshot, and there's a reference to the room in this game, and I'm going to find it, and then I'm going to high five it.
Yeah.
But, to take us maybe a little more into like the systems aspect of it, I actually found that while at first I was like, oh, it's just generic turn-based combat, in addition to the movement thing and the different meters you have going on, the way you outfit your characters is actually really interesting, like the orbment thing, because like you said, it's sort of materia, but there's a lot more customization. Yeah, like...
How much did you guys actually use of that, though?
I think I've got half of Estelle and Joshua's grids unlocked by now, but I was doing a lot of side quests, and so I had extra.
See, so I did every side quest. I had no problems with any single battle. I only had it in what was required when you were doing it as like that last lesson thing.
Okay.
And it almost seemed arbitrary and unnecessary. It seemed super interesting.
So I wonder, again, I haven't played enough. Like, I've messed around with it a little bit, but I sort of haven't had a ton of options yet either. So, maybe for the folks here who have played the whole game, does it seem like that system sort of justifies itself more as the game goes on, or...
I can't remember. I vaguely feel like it was kind of like Suikoden, where like some characters have a really high magic stat, so you use it a lot more.
So maybe that'll be a good question to come back to in our second episode.
For sure.
See how we're feeling about the way the systems sort of pan out, because people talk to death about the dialogue in this game and the story and how much they love Estelle and Joshua. But I don't know that a lot of the discussion ever seems to delve into how the game plays and how like mechanically it goes. Because when I think of Falcom, I don't have this sort of abiding love of them that a lot of people do. But I do think of like the Ys games as having really solid systems in place in terms of their action combat. So I would be surprised if this one turns out to be, you can mess with the orbment, but it doesn't matter.
I don't remember being upset with it, so I don't know.
I've been waiting to be forced to use it because I want to use it, but I see no need to. And so when I'm going through and I'm essentially just grinding through my battles, I can go attack. Oh, this one needs magic. I throw that one magic attack out and the battle's over.
That's true. So
and
it's
even
almost
with, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's kind of like a square peg, square hole thing for that.
It feels like the orbments.
Yeah.
Sorry, it feels like the orbments I have been equipping are like I have a few that give. Some of them give characters new skills. Other of them are just seem to be like stat bonuses. And I feel like most of the ones I've been using are just like increased dexterity or things like that.
Just makes you have faster action speed or something.
Yeah.
See,
Which is no.
Yeah, I could see that being super necessary because the counter to that is I bought every possible piece of gear for them and upgraded them like as quickly as I could.
Right.
So that's kind of the same thing. It's just using it through the ordnance.
That was pretty interesting. For myself, I generally, whenever I play an RPG, I don't really focus on defense or like things like that. I usually use as much offensive equipment and magic or orbitments as possible. So as soon as the battle starts, I'm already wasting my EP? Or something like that. EP. I'm draining that sucker out because doesn't it get restored when you level up?
Yes.
Yeah, it does.
Yes. So like I'm already like gauging when I'm going to level up. And whenever I see like a cutscene happen, and then where it wants you to go to it, I'm like, I'm gonna go level up, and then I'm gonna come back. If there's like nowhere to rest up or anything.
Interesting. Yeah, so you're approaching that with a more strategic angle. I mean, I tend to go pretty aggressive when I customize my party in RPGs, depending on the game. But in this one, I don't know that I've thought of that yet. But it's interesting that you're actually approaching it from the perspective of, when can I strategically level up?
I was going to say, you got me really excited, Steven, when you said this game had a hard mode, because I forgot, I never saw the option, because it's only on a second playthrough.
Is it?
I feel like it was there at the beginning.
It wasn't for me.
Are you playing on you're playing the PSP version?
Well, the first time I did, and I didn't remember seeing it then either. But I looked it up on the game facts, and they said it has a hard and nightmare mode, but you have to beat the game.
That might be the case.
I don't recall seeing a difficulty option.
I remember seeing a difficulty option, but I didn't even look at it because I knew I was going to play through on normal, so I left it alone.
Oh.
Yeah, like I know. I haven't messed with the difficulty only because, again, I wanted to be able to play through this in the time that we're going to allot for it, and my general tendency to play things on Nightmare Insane mode would slow that progress.
Slows you down, yeah. But you get more mileage.
I do, but
do it for glory.
But I'm doing this for the love of trails. So
For the love of tits.
I don't know if there were any other points any of you wanted to bring up, but I was thinking what we could do to sort of wrap up this first episode, because I'm sure we'll have plenty more detail to talk about in the second episode as we've made it further and further into the game. Maybe we could all talk about, give like we'll do a Colbert-style final thought, like, what is your, after playing the prologue and a little more of the beginning of Trails of the Sky, how are you feeling about it? Davey, go first.
Well, I already beat the game. I'm really excited that I don't remember as much of it. It feels really, really fresh all over again, and there's just so much care put in the writing. Like, I want to find everyone and gobble up all their text. Num 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 num.
So let's go with someone who I perceived a little more lukewarm. Well, not lukewarm, but a little more maybe cautious. Josh, what are you thinking?
So I'm playing on my Vita, like I said. So I've gotten in this habit of, because I'm a PlayStation Plus member, I get a lot of free games, and I'll play like the first 5 minutes, then drop it if I don't like it.
That's my life.
This was one of those games that I absolutely would have dropped. So it was kind of one of those. Originally, I was really frustrated because I was like, I have to play this all month, and that originally sounded terrible. Now that I'm a little bit deeper in, I'm really excited because I see that there could be a lot of promise there. I'm not convinced that all of it's going to be there, but I guess I'm cautiously optimistic.
So you would say you are sitting on the fence?
Yeah, I'm starting to like Estelle more. Originally, I wanted to strangle her.
Me too.
So that's a huge plus because I feel like she's going to be around for a while.
That does seem to be the case.
But I could still see her kind of bouncing back at some point and switching over to like, all right, I'm annoyed with you again.
Kind of like Luke from Tales of the Abyss. I love him as a character, but he's utterly insufferable for the first half of the game.
Yep.
But I think for me, the battle system is actually what's going to carry me through this game.
Really interesting.
That was originally the only thing that I liked about it. It reminded me of Final Fantasy Tactics originally. Just kind of that strategic kind of moving things around. This is obviously a much more simplified version of it. Or at least it seems like it to me. But that's kind of like, it harkened back to that, so that got me excited originally.
That gets me excited. We should do a Final Fantasy Tactics series of episodes for this show.
I would absolutely love that.
It's got a lot of votes on our deck.
My username on our boards is Talus Ramza. One of them is a made-up name, and one of them is, well, Ramza. So, Tactics is my second favorite Final Fantasy of all time, only to 9.
It'd be my second favorite to 12.
Interesting. That's a good...
Oh my god.
12
which pisses everybody off every time I say that.
I don't even want to talk about it.
I think 12 is a flawed game, but I'm with you that it's underappreciated.
I really enjoyed the more political aspect of it.
Me too. We should talk about this sometime.
Do you guys remember when the giant of Babel came out of a mountain?
Yes, actually.
That was the bomb.
Do you remember how awesome that was?
Yes. Oh my god.
And then we went to the moon.
I can just
Hey,
hear the
do you guys
song.
remember when Kuja got so angry he blew up a planet? Peter, what do you think of Trails in the Sky right now?
I'm halfway over the fence, I think.
Halfway into the you are done with this?
I'm a little less up on it than I was expecting, but I like it. I've started Trails in the Sky a couple of times before now, and then I've just never gotten very far in it. There's just something about I have the same reaction towards most of the Tales games, where there's just something about it that I kind of turns me off a bit.
Well, with Tales of Celia, it could be that it's not good, but sorry. They will get so angry at me for saying that.
But yeah, I mean, and with Trails though, like as I'm playing it now, I'm like, I like the dialogue between the characters. I really like the detail that they put into their localization, and I actually do like Estelle as a character. I texted one of my friends as I was playing the prologue, saying, "Hey, I think I found your video game spirit animal," because they're very similar people. They both can't cook. Sorry, not sorry.
That's terrifying that that person exists in real life.
I know, right?
You know what, though? I am on board. If Estelle becomes a gourmand and starts cooking amazing food, we're all going to eat our words, and let's just say I hope that's working. She made the egg and rice thing, and that came out all right.
Egg explosion?
Egg explosion on rice.
I actually laughed at that line, and I tried to find it in Japanese, what it was in Japanese, and I couldn't, because I wanted to know what it was originally, because that was such a funny localization for that. Estelle's egg explosion. And, like, the dialogue on that scene, too, like when Josh is in the room with, or Joshua, for clarity's sake, is in the room with Cassius, and you just hear, "Oh, I didn't think the eggs were supposed to break like that!" They got a chuckle out of me from that.
I want to know what she's saying in Japanese when she threatens to brain people.
I don't know. I'll have to look at. I'll see if I can look into that for the next episode, because this is the sort of thing where I think there's a lot of flavor in the English localization, and I would be curious how much of it is in the original and how much of it is Exceed sort of being the skilled translators that they are.
Speaking of which, it throws me off every time they talk about like their god. It's called Adios. Does anybody else knows that?
Adidos or something? Yeah.
I in my mind, because I study Spanish, like I view that as adios, goodbye. And so the first time they're like, praise, adios. I was like, you're happy, but you want me to leave?
Sort of like, praise, oh, I'm out.
See, I always read it as adios. I don't know why. Maybe just because I didn't.
Adios.
Adios?
Adios.
It is kind of awkward. You like either way.
It sure is.
So, Marcos, what are your thoughts? You've played it before, but, for the purposes of our little chat here, how are you feeling, this far into the game? Do you recall when you first played how you felt? That sort of thing.
I lost interest, but not because of the game, because I found interest in something else a little bit more interesting. Again, not blaming the game. So far, like, I don't have any opinion on this game, or any good opinion or bad, because I've watched a lot of anime myself, and I see like a lot of tropes dropping like rain everywhere I turn, and I'm waiting for like something to develop out of this, because like, yeah, we're gonna see these kinds of characters, and I'm waiting for the next tropey character. There's probably gonna be a little girl joining or something like that.
There's an opening cutscene.
If she's not a jungle girl, that's good. That means it's taking away a little bit.
But when are we gonna get the super cool guy with a mysterious past?
You mean the 30-year-old?
Maybe
That's not an old
he wears
man.
a hat. Maybe he wears a hat. Maybe he wields a gun or something.
Or maybe he has a softball coach mustache. Estelle's and Joshua's father sports that.
And man, that guy has a mustache to end mustaches.
I'm impressed with it. But no, I'm gonna give it a little bit more thought. I'm just looking, see how it goes, and so far, it's a game.
Yeah.
Well, it's a game, ladies and gentlemen. That's Zero Encounter 1.
It's a game.
I would say, not to pick a weak stance here, but I sort of agree with what all of you were saying. For me personally, again, I came in sort of resistant to this game, but I'm warming up to it. But again, I think just like Josh, I'm on the fence. I could easily see this becoming a mash A to win everything, and then do your perfunctory dungeon. That's sort of like what Ys Origin became for me. It was like, all right, whatever. I don't care about the story. I'm done. So for me, I'm enjoying the combat, but I could see it getting so easy that it's no longer of interest to me. Especially for me, because I like things to be very challenging. But I could see the dialogue and story carrying me through, because while I like this a fascinating, unique, never been told before story, I also really like charming characters told well.
Yeah.
And I could see this being that. So I'm on the fence as well. I would say I'm also cautiously optimistic.
I would say on my first time through, at this point, I was like horrified. I thought it was just gonna be garbage. I was like, I didn't know anything about it going in, and I was like, this is some tropey anime bullcrap.
Well, It's funny. So what was the first Legend of Heroes released on PSP? The one with the terrible translations. Does anyone remember? Legend of Heroes Gagharv or something? I don't know.
Tear of Vermilion or something like that.
Tears of Sorrow.
There were 3 of them on PSP before Trails, and they were all pretty bad.
Yeah, like I played it and I was like, this game is absolutely terrible. This is JRPG trademark. Like, this is just everything that is... It wasn't bad, or rather, it wasn't... It was inoffensive, is perhaps the best thing that it's...
No, it's a good way to put it, because I looked at them too.
It was fun.
like, I don't want to play this.
Yeah, but this one, I think, already has established more of an identity for itself.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, gentlemen,
Are
thank you
talking
for...
about
What's that?
The Legend of Heroes Akai Shizuku?
That's the original name. There's the English name.
Gagharv Trilogy.
Maybe?
Tear of Vermilion.
Oh,
Yeah, that's...
Song of the Ocean. Tear of Vermilion and Prophecy of the Moonlight Witch.
I think Tear of Vermilion is the one I played, because I remember I desperately wanted an RPG for my PSP, and I was not happy.
Oh, well.
It's alright, though. Shortly after, I got Crisis Core, and everything was okay.
Never played that. Is that good?
Fantastic. We should play it on here. It makes Zack a more interesting character, and it makes Sephiroth a better character. In fact, it does wonders for all of the characters in 7.
It's a really fun game, regardless.
I was about to say, what if I don't care about the FF7 canon?
You'll like the game regardless. It's a really fun game.
It's good independent of it.
It might make you care about the FF7 canon.
Yeah.
I find that difficult and hard to believe.
Now, are you talking the FF7 canon post-compilation? Because FF7 is, on its own, I think, is a standalone, very interesting story, and I think...
Interesting is the right word for it.
I think the Internet Society and the overexposure to Cloud and the compilation have created this personality where Cloud is like emo, and Cloud is not emo. Cloud is sort of a big doofus. Like, he says cheesy lines, like, I feel like the way Cloud has been portrayed post FF7 is not consistent with how he is portrayed in FF7, especially at the end.
Yeah, I mean, we should look at him as a cross-dresser before anything else.
Yeah, he's a cross-dresser who says, let's move, or let's mosey to the final boss. Like,
oh, gosh, yeah.
That's not a guy who sits there going, my darkness is dark and darkness. Sephiroth is my darkness. I need darkness. It's darkness. I can't be with you, darkness. Like...
Oh, it's Kingdom Hearts stuff there, man.
No, that's Cloud's entire arc in Kingdom Hearts. I'm so dark.
Yes, it is. I was a little dismayed by that approach.
But again, they sort of get passes because all the Final Fantasy characters in Kingdom Hearts are sort of just...
Brooding?
Yeah.
What's one of their tropes? Yeah. Well, not all of them. Like, Yuna, Rika, and Pain are adorable. They're like little fairies.
Oh,
yeah.
They try to steal stuff from you, and they're working for Maleficent because apparently evil will always win because good is dumb. I love Kingdom Hearts, but that is the absolute truth. That series is the ultimate example of evil will always triumph because good is dumb. Because all of the good guys are complete idiots in the Kingdom Hearts series.
But they win eventually. Kind of.
They do, but Dream Drop Distance tells you that Sora's superpower is that he's dumb and blunt. Like, it's just... I think that'll do us for the first episode.
Yeah.
On that note, we played Trails in the Sky, not Kingdom Hearts. This is
Or FF7.
Don't let me carjack anything.
Can we all agree to never play FF7? That game is way too long.
You should play FF12 before that.
I would
Actually,
play
a good
FF12
game.
before
All right.
7. Yeah.
We are lighting things on fire here way too early. Calm down, dude. This is one episode. You can't drop the no FF7 bomb just that soon.
So, could we reliably play that game in a month?
You are the one who says you want
It's
to.
not that long.
Yeah, you could.
You're the one, and this is a good segue into our closing comments. We are wanting to really have the audience participate with us in this, and we know it'll take some time to build up an audience, but we want to hear from you about this. You can email us at retro@rpgfan.com, nice and easy. If you say, if there's a game you want to hear us play, please do suggest it. We have a giant list, but we've definitely missed stuff. So, let us know. We might get 30 people saying we want Davey to play Final Fantasy VII, and I will force him to play it.
I would enjoy that.
Said it.
You know what? If we do that, I'll play Final Fantasy IV. I hate Final Fantasy IV. You guys are lighting things on fire too.
We got that HD After Years thing coming out soon.
Yeah, because that shouldn't have been forgotten about.
Because I too love fan fiction add-ons to my favorite game stories. But no. I think to be fair, turn out to be fair. But again, audience, write to us. Tell us, if you think we can improve this show, if there's a way we could change the format. Again, we've set up a rough format for how we're going to do this first game in terms of beginning, middle, and end. But we'd love to hear your suggestions. We'd love to hear what you think as you're playing the game. We'll talk about this on the message boards. We'll make a new thread. We would love to hear, ideally, since we'll be starting these games at the beginning of every month and you'll know what we're going to play, you could sit down and say, hey, I'm going to play along with the Retro Encounter team and, take part in the conversation, because that's what we want to do. We want to make a message board thread on RPG Fan where we're like, hey, this is what I just did. And so almost like the play journals that we have going on now. We want this to be sort of us talking about it, but also talking about it with you, not just with each other. So please do, reach out to us if, we picked a game that we know a lot of people are fans of for the first one. So we'd love to hear just your basic thoughts on it. We'll have 2 episodes right up when this launches. One of them is just episode 0, but whatever. You'll be able to subscribe to us on iTunes and an RSS feed. So we want you to basically tell us what you want to hear us talk about. Because again, if it were up to me, we'd be playing every Kingdom Hearts, Shadow Hearts, and Final Fantasy IX over and over again.
Just everything with hearts in the name. Shining Hearts.
That is a good point. No, I don't like Shining Hearts. I've beaten that.
Oh yeah, that's bad.
We should play Shining Force 2. It's a good idea.
Yeah, we should. Is that on the doc?
Is Phantasy Star 4 in the document?
I was thinking that the other day. That needs to get on there. So anyway, we can tell them now what we're playing next month.
Yeah, what are we playing next month, Davey?
We're playing Final Fantasy X.
This may
Yay.
Sorry. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and make this pack now for the sake of the audience. Can all of us agree? Not all of us might be here for that game, but any of us that will be. Can we all agree that none of us will attempt to emulate Titus's laugh?
I'm okay with that. Okay. I will not do it. I promise.
Because I will probably break that rule the moment the episode starts.
I was gonna say, I'm not.
I want you to call me on that.
I solemnly swear that I'm up to no good.
I don't have the capability to know.
We could always.
We couldn't make it 15 seconds.
You said during the Final Fantasy X podcast, not during this podcast.
We should get it.
Oh, that is it. Ladies and gentlemen, Retro Encounter 1-1. Good night.
We need to get it out of our systems now.